Happy holidays, everyone. You know, when we think about Christmas, we usually think about, twinkling lights and carols and all that good cheer.
Right.
But what if I told you there's like a darker, spookier side to this whole festive season? We're going on a deep dive this Christmas and exploring the tradition of ghost stories during the holidays.
Okay.
Why were these chilling tales so popular? Especially in Victorian England. And why do they still captivate us even, all these years later? Let's find out.
You know, it's really fascinating how this whole tradition, it's actually much older than you might think.
Right.
Long before, Dickens and the Victorians, all those ancient cultures, they had their own kind of winter solstice traditions that were tied to darkness, death, and the supernatural.
You mean like those pagan celebrations we hear about? Like,
Yeah. Think about like the Norse Yule or the Roman Saturnalia. Those weren't just, feasts and gift giving. They were times of year when people really believed that the veil between the worlds, like thin, and spirits could just walk among us.
So like a supernatural open house during the darkest time of year.
Exact.
No wonder those celebrations had a spooky edge to them.
Exactly. And even as Christianity, adopted December 25th as the date for Christmas.
Right.
Those anxieties about the darkness and the supernatural, they kind of lingered.
Yeah, I can see that.
So imagine like being huddled around a fire during,
The longest nights.
the longest nights of the year, yeah, and sharing those spooky tales as a way to cope with those primal fears.
It makes you want to build a fire right now and dim the lights, right?
Right.
So this fear of spirits, that sets the stage for the Victorian era and their fascination with ghost stories.
Precisely. But it's not just a continuation of those ancient fears.
Oh, okay.
Victorian England had its own unique anxieties that fueled this obsession.
Okay, let's unpack this Victorian era fascination a little bit. What was it about the 1800s that made these ghost stories so popular? I mean, beyond the long winter nights, of course.
Well, think about it. This was a time of rapid societal change, industrialization, scientific advancements, growing middle class.
Yeah.
But it was also a time of really high mortality rates, especially among children.
Wow.
Death was a constant presence in Victorian life.
So while society was changing rapidly, they were also constantly confronted with their own mortality.
Exactly. That's why spiritualism and seances became like all the rage.
Yeah.
People were desperate to connect with loved ones who had passed away.
Right.
And fascinated by the idea of an afterlife.
Okay, so that makes sense. And this all happened to coincide with a revival of Christmas traditions, right?
Yes. And here's where Charles Dickens comes in.
Okay.
He played a huge role in shaping how we celebrate Christmas today, emphasizing family and charity and storytelling.
Yeah.
And what better setting for a good ghost story than, a family gathered around a crackling fire on a cold Christmas Eve.
It's interesting how Dickens helped shape both the warm, fuzzy side of Christmas and the spooky side.
Yeah,
I guess you could say he really understood the complexities of the season.
absolutely. And there's this great quote from a Victorian magazine
Okay.
that perfectly captures this sentiment. It says, whenever 5 or 6 English-speaking people meet round a fire on Christmas Eve, they start telling each other ghost stories.
Wow.
It's just this vivid image.
I love that. So let's talk about the man himself, Charles Dickens.
Yes.
Everyone knows A Christmas Carol, but he wrote other ghost stories specifically for Christmas too, right?
Oh, absolutely. A Christmas Carol is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
He wrote a whole series of Christmas ghost stories.
Wow.
Almost like an annual tradition for his readers.
Oh, wow.
Take The Haunted Man and the Ghost's Bargain, for instance. It explores the idea of being haunted by one's own, past regrets.
So even his lesser-known stories were tapping into those deeper themes of regret and redemption and second chances that we see in A Christmas Carol.
Exactly. And these themes weren't just limited to A Christmas Carol. They were woven throughout many of his Christmas ghost stories, making them perfect for that reflective mood of the holiday season.
Okay, but I have to ask about one of his most famous ghost stories.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't explicitly written for Christmas,
Sure.
The Signal Man.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so eerie and atmospheric.
It is.
And there's something about it that makes it perfect for a cold winter night.
You're right. That one is chilling.
Yeah.
It's the story of a solitary railway worker who keeps seeing a ghostly figure near a train tunnel. And every time this apparition appears, a a terrible accident follows.
That's like premonition of disaster.
Right. And the way Dickens describes the setting, that oppressive gloom of the railway cut, that eerie red light near the tunnel entrance, it just heightens the tension and creates this unsettling atmosphere.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not just about the scares, is it? There's a sense of mystery and even a touch of sadness to the signalman, which makes it, resonate on a deeper level.
Yeah.
It's not just about the ghost. It's about the signalman's isolation and the weight of responsibility that he carries.
You've hit on something really important there. Even in a story like The Signalman, which wasn't specifically written for Christmas, we see those classic Dickensian themes of isolation, the fragility of life, and the consequences of our choices.
So Dickens really set the standard for this genre.
He did.
But I'm guessing he wasn't the only one writing spooky Christmas tales.
Not at all. Dickens sparked a trend, and other Victorian writers, they eagerly followed suit, crafting their own eerie tales for the holidays.
So it's like the Victorian version of a holiday movie marathon, but with ghost stories instead of rom-coms.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Think of it more like a literary advent calendar, but filled with chills and thrills.
Oh, like that.
You had writers like Elizabeth Gaskell, known for her social commentary, contributing spooky tales to holiday publications.
Wow.
Then there was Wilkie Collins, the master of mystery,
Right.
adding his own brand of suspense to the Christmas season.
And let's not forget M.R. James.
Oh, yeah.
Who practically made a career out of crafting these chilling ghost stories.
Yeah.
And many of which were, perfect for fireside reading during the holiday.
Exactly.
Wow, so there was like a whole community of Victorian authors churning out these ghost stories for Christmas.
They were...
I'm starting to think they were onto something. But it wasn't just about giving people a good scare, was it? These stories had a deeper purpose, right?
Absolutely. These stories weren't just about bumps in the night.
Right.
They were morality tales, often exploring themes of regret, redemption, and the fragility of life. They encouraged readers to reflect on their own actions and perhaps, make amends before it was too late.
Kind of like a spooky version of New Year's resolutions.
Exactly. It's fascinating how they tied these deeper themes to a holiday that we often see as purely joyful.
Yeah, that is interesting.
For the Victorians, Christmas was a time for introspection, for remembering loved ones who had passed away, and for contemplating one's own mortality.
It makes sense when you think about it. Winter itself has that eerie, introspective vibe,
Right.
The long nights, the bare trees, the stillness in the air. It's almost like nature is setting the stage for a good ghost story.
You're so right.
Yeah.
The Victorians were very attuned to the natural world and its cycles. Winter was a time of dormancy, a time when the veil between the worlds felt thin, and the darkness seemed to hold secrets.
And back then, there were no smartphones or TVs to distract them from those long winter nights.
Precisely. Families, they huddled together in these often drafty, dimly lit homes.
Right.
And storytelling became a primary source of entertainment.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It makes you wonder if those conditions actually heightened their imaginations and made those ghost stories even more vivid and real.
I bet it did. It's fascinating how those Victorian customs, as spooky as they might seem, they still resonate with us today.
They do, don't they? We still watch, adaptations of A Christmas Carol every year.
Right.
And even our holiday music, it contains these subtle hints of this ghostly tradition.
Wait, really? Holiday music? Give me an example.
Well, think about that classic Christmas song, It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year.
Okay.
There's a line that goes, "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago."
Wow, you're right. I've heard that song a million times, but I never really stopped to think about that lyric.
Right.
It's like a little nod to those Victorian fireside gatherings.
It is. And it reminds us that these seemingly disparate elements, Christmas cheer and spooky tales.
Yeah.
They were often interwoven for the Victorians. They understood that there are multiple layers to this time of year.
So even though we might not all gather around for ghost stories these days, the tradition endures in a way.
It does, and I think it speaks to a deeper human fascination with the unknown, with those
Yeah.
things that go bump in the night, and it's particularly potent during this time of year when we're naturally drawn to reflection and introspection.
It's like ghost stories offer us a way to confront our fears and anxieties,
Uh-huh.
especially during a season that's supposed to be about, joy and celebration.
Right.
It's a reminder that life is full of contrasts and that darkness and light often coexist.
Exactly. And maybe there's something cathartic about embracing the darker side of the holidays.
Maybe it's a way to acknowledge that even in the midst of all the merriment, there's still a part of us that's drawn to the mysteries and the shadows.
And who knows? Maybe indulging in a good ghost story or two during the holidays, it helps us appreciate the light and the warmth even more.
That's a great point. It's like that saying, you can't have the sweet without the sour.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't have the true Christmas spirit without acknowledging a little bit of the spooky side as well.
Mm.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the spooky side of Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
what's the takeaway for you? Should we all be like dusting off those Victorian ghost stories and gathering around the fireplace for a good old-fashioned fright night?
I think the key takeaway here is to embrace the complexity of the holiday season.
Yeah.
Christmas, it isn't just about, presents and carols. It's
Mhm.
also a time for reflection, for remembering those who are no longer with us, and for contemplating life's, deeper questions.
So you're saying that acknowledging the darker side of Christmas,
Yeah.
it actually enhances the celebration.
Exactly. The Victorians, they understood this.
Okay.
They didn't shy away from life's, darker aspects, even during the holidays. In
Yeah.
fact, they incorporated those elements into their celebrations and found meaning and even a strange sort of comfort in them.
It's like they were saying, hey, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows,
Wow, right.
but even in the shadows, there's beauty and wonder to be found.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And maybe that's why ghost stories with their themes of mortality, regret, and redemption, they resonated so strongly with them during the Christmas season.
So maybe this Christmas we can all, take a cue from the Victorians and add a little bit of spooky to our festivities.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to scare ourselves silly,
Right.
but to embrace the full spectrum of emotions that this time of year, evokes.
I love that idea. Imagine,
Yeah.
dimming the lights, lighting some candles, and sharing a ghost story or two with loved ones. It
Yeah.
could be a way to connect with those who came before us, to honor their traditions and to tap into that timeless fascination with the unknown.
And who knows, maybe a good ghost story will remind us to cherish the present
Yeah.
and live our lives with a little more intention,
Mm-hmm.
just like, Scrooge learned to do in A Christmas Carol.
It's interesting that you mentioned A Christmas Carol, because even in Dickens' most famous ghost story, there's that underlying message of hope.
Right.
Scrooge, he's given a second chance to redeem himself and make things right.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of hope, a possibility for transformation and renewal.
And perhaps that's the enduring appeal of ghost stories at Christmas. They remind us that life is precious, that time is fleeting, and that it's never too late to make a change for the better.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our Christmas deep dive.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the spooky side of the holidays.
And to you, we wish a season filled with both warmth and a touch of wonder.
Oh.
Perhaps you'll even find yourself drawn to a ghost story or two as you gather with loved ones this year.
Happy holidays.